Hey everyone, Diggs here for Lockpickers United, and welcome to Fabrication Friday. Today I'm going to be showing you how to improve cheap dimple picks. And because the lock of the week is the Miwa PR, and because you can use dimple picks on it, I'm going to show you how to make one that actually works well for it. So what I'm starting with is a cheap set from banggood.com I got about a year ago, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like stock. You can see this pick starts out with a shank that is square, is awfully fat, and has a lower flag on it. So what we're going to do is shape the front of this, slim it down a little bit, and round it, and make it smooth so it does a better job and it can actually fit in this Miwa PR. As you can see right now, if you try to slide that right down under the wafers, it just won't happen. It can't even get under the first one. And if you do manage to get it under the first one, it'll be so terribly overset that you're going to have to start over anyway. This is a fairly restrictive keyway, as Correct showed very well in his Tuesday video. So today we're going to make this terrible pick do a good job on this lock. And then on Saturday you'll see us slay it. So I'm going to start by knocking this profile down a little bit. It starts off as a square, and when you insert something with a flat face into the lock, it's just bound to get hung up on everything that it can. So you see I put a pretty sharp bend on that, and that's because I intend to take the profile of the shank, the thickness of the shank, way down. So you see I'm knocking off the corners here, just the extreme edges. It's just a little faster. You could use the sanding barrel for the whole process, but when you start off with something this wide, you can get away with using the cutting wheel for a minute. Missed a spot and went back and grabbed it there. Now I'm switching out for the sanding barrel because at this point I want to round the shaft, and I'll go back and forth, and you see I start rotating the handle. I'm rotating the pick as I go along because it's the best way to try and get an evenly round shaft. You're never going to get it perfect doing it this way with a Dremel, and honestly, it doesn't really matter that much. You just need to get it as round as possible. So when you buy dimple picks, when you buy the cheap ones, the super cheap ones like these, you got to put some work into them before they're even really usable. If you've got a lock with a big old wide open keyway, like maybe a multi-lock, you can get away with it sometimes, just these out of the package. But you'll find that the more money you spend on dimple pick sets, the more likely you are to be able to use them out of the box. And they range all over the place in cost. Our own Captain Hook is actually going to do a full video on the differences between the dimple sets because he actually owns most of them. So what you see here is I'm knocking down the width of the profile. And now I'm trying to kind of chamfer the front and rear of it, and that's so that it can slide underneath things smoothly, both moving into the lock and back out of it. If you leave that back edge flat, it'll do the same thing. It'll get caught on everything in the world, but only when you're trying to pull the pick out. So at this point I've got a chamfer on it, but I've noticed that there's that real sharp angle right there, so I'm going to try and round that out a little bit. And once I do, I'm actually satisfied with it, but then I realize it's a little too round because everything's just going to slip right off of it. So I try and put a little bit of a flat face on there. And then I try and thin out that profile a little bit. This particular pick sits higher than it does wide, so making it round all the way down the shaft is kind of a challenge. Here I'm doing a little bit of a fit test, and if you're making a pick specific to a lock, fit testing is king. You have to do it all the way through the process because you'll either wind up taking off too much or you won't take off enough. You'll spend a bunch of time on it and you'll get it all polished up and then realize, well, I got a bunch more material removal to do. and then you just, mar up that surface you just worked to attain. So here I'm pretty close. I'm almost satisfied. The profile looks good, but the shaft is still a little bit thick, and there's still that sharp little bit there in the corner. So I try and get it with the very edge of the sanding barrel there, just kissing it into the corner, trying to get that out. I'm just touching it right onto the tip of the profile there, trying to make sure it's flat and round at the same time. And now I'm smoothing out that real sharp angle onto the main part of the shaft, trying to thin that down so it's not so tall. So she's pretty close at this point. I'm taking a look at the shaft to see, do I need to take any more off, or is it ready to polish? And it's pretty thin up at the tip. It looks good, but then right there where I'm squeezing, it gets a little too thick. So I decided to take off some more material. Like I said, this set came from banggood.com, and there's actually another set on that website called the Honest Dongs. It's a hilarious name. We all laugh about it, but they make some pretty good dimple picks, at least for a beginner level cost. So those are worth checking out too. They start off at a little better of a place than these do. I want to say that these were under the brand name Danu, but I'm going to put a link to both of those pick sets in the description. Here I'm doing another fit test, just trying to see if I can slide under the wafers real easy, how much it upsets them when I do. And you see it's pretty smooth at this point. Don't get too much interruption. I can feel the wafers, but just barely. And that's actually perfect, because if you want to find a binder sliding right underneath it, you need to touch it just a little bit to be able to feel if it's moving smoothly or if it's stuck. So I've decided that the profile's good, and I'm going to polish it down. Once you have the shape right and the profile good, the sanding process becomes pretty important, because it just makes it so much easier to slide a pick in and out of a lock. Those little tiny bits, imperfections in the surface, can get hung up on very finely machined things, and the Miwa PR is a very finely machined lock. So I don't take it through my whole sanding process, because this is not a pick that I need to look perfect. It started out as, I would say, almost garbage, and I'm just trying to get it to the point where it's a good usable pick. It doesn't need to be a perfect finish. So I'm starting out with 600 grit, and I work my way up to 800 and 1200. So you can see there I'm sanding the chamfers, trying to make sure that that front is very smooth. I'm folding up the sandpaper here so that I can get right in this corner on the back side of the pick tip, and it actually works out pretty well. I was surprised. That sanding barrel just can't really get in there perfectly, so I wound up having to take a little material off just using the sandpaper. Stepping up to the next one. If you can't tell, this video is sped up by 300%. I was trying to figure out if I could speed the video up and still keep the audio in the background, because that background noise of the Dremel going, even when it's brought down a whole lot in audio level, is just a little more concerning than silence and my voice. But it is what it is. So tomorrow is going to be Slaying Saturday, and Correct Jeans is breaking it out again. Same lock that you saw on Teardown Tuesday. and he does a really good job picking it. If you haven't watched very many videos from our channel yet, please go back and start at the beginning and work your way through it. And I would really like some feedback on this one, just in general about the format of the channel. What do you guys think about the order in which we do things? I've seen a few comments that it's kind of confusing for some of you, but we're trying to do both very beginner stuff, that's our Mentorship Monday videos, and then the rest of the week is really dedicated to more difficult stuff, more advanced stuff. And eventually, those two tracks of videos are going to meet each other in the middle, and we'll see things like the Chicago Duo and the Everest Primus, and more of the locks that you would see at the beginning of high security. That's going to be much further down the road. So we're starting with all of the black belt locks. And on Mentorship Monday, we're starting with basic knowledge. This is all the stuff that we wish we had been told at the beginning, and we're trying to build it as slowly and carefully as possible. So if you have any ideas for topics for those days, for Mondays specifically, please shoot it into the comments so we can see that. And, if it makes sense logically in the path that we're building, we'll definitely include it. So here I'm up to 1200 grit. This is where I stop. I could take it up to 2000. And with enough work, 2000 will actually make it a mirror finish. Or I could have done 3000, 5000, 7000 and gotten mirror finish with a lot less work. If you've been liking our videos so far and you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do that. If you like this video, go ahead and like it. While this video is showing you how to do a pick that's really fit and designed for a Miwa PR, it'll also work on a bunch of locks. Generally, when you take these profiles down and make them smooth, they'll work on many more locks than they would have as they come in the package. So it's worth it to experiment, change some profiles. If you've got a cheap set like this, it really isn't breaking your bank if you mess one up or if you take too much off. You can make experimental picks, things that are specific to a particular lock's finger pins, for example, or if you're picking a particular dimple lock. At this point, I'm real happy with it. It's smooth, it's the right shape, it fit tests very well, and I'm basically done. So I'm going to show you, I'm attempting to show you how thin the tip of that is and the profile in general, how it graduates from very, very thin up to thicker, but not nearly as thick as the pick was originally. And here I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison by pulling out a twin of this exact flag and showing you how it started and where it wound up. So you can see the crazy difference there, both in height, thickness, shape. I mean, it's different in every possible way. And I don't know, I spent maybe 15 minutes on it. You can see it's much thinner now, especially right at the very tip. And it's also thinner and much more round. So I'm willing to bet this flag will be usable in most dimple locks. It's not nearly as wide as it was at the tip, and so it doesn't reach as high as it used to. But that's okay, because most dimple locks don't use a ton of space. Thanks for watching, everybody.